Immigration and Customs Enforcement Field Office right here in Burlington, Mass. has been the focus of activists and public officials' ire for months. People held there overnight say the conditions are inhumane, cold concrete floors, lack of proper medical care. It's all despite a contract agreement with Burlington itself that stipulated that people would not be held there overnight. Here's Milford teen Marcelo Gomes da Silva, who was held at the facility for 6 days last summer, speaking with GBH after his release.
Outside of the cells it was cold, but inside of them it was really hot because there were like 35 men, and we would always like beg them to leave a little gap on the door open. We obviously sleep on concrete, aluminum foil as like our blankets. There was only one toilet. A lot of us were sick. We had no sanitary items or anything like that.
It's not El Salvador, friends. That's Burlington, Massachusetts. We're joined now at the library desk by 3 people who've attempted to deliver care packages, essentially humanitarian aid, to people held in the Burlington office. Eric Segal, Reverend Fred Small, and Nastasia Lawton. They've each been charged with trespassing. Some face an additional disturbing the peace charge. Their arrest came at a time when ICE says it's beginning, as we said, 2,000 people in Minneapolis. Eric, Fred, Nastasia, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. So let's start with you, Reverend Fred Small. What were you doing up there in Burlington?
We were attempting to deliver humanitarian aid, food, clothing, toiletries, including menstrual products that have been denied to women detainees. It was the height of the holiday season, 9 days before Christmas, second day of Hanukkah. We were joining a centuries-old tradition of sharing abundance and visiting our neighbors.
Sitting outside the door?
Well, we sat when we were denied permission to deliver the care packages, and we were hoping that we would be admitted.
I'm going to skip over you, Nastasia, because your encounter was in September. I want to stay with this one here. You were there as well. What was the response of people from ICE in Burlington?
They did not allow us to bring the care packages in. They came out and they immediately said, "Forget it. You're not bringing this stuff in."
And did they call the cops?
They called the cops.
And what happened then?
The police came and they asked us to leave. We were not going to leave. I mean, this was something that was important to us. I've known people who've been in there. The conditions are terrible. We really wanted to get in there and provide some aid for them.
You had a similar experience a few months earlier, Nastasia. Nastasia, tell us about what happened with you and your colleagues.
We did, yeah. So my friends Nathan and Eleanor and I had been reading, the same information that you shared with Growing Horror, and the solution seemed really simple, that if people are being denied food and the institution isn't going to alleviate the problem, we would do it for them. And so we brought food. We focused on food. That's kind of a personal way that I show care, as many of us do. And we brought it up to the door, the outside door, where the public goes in and out. And we asked to be able to deliver the food to people who were in there. And we were met with pretty strong anger, some physical violence.
What do you mean physical violence?
One of the ICE agents attempted to physically move me from my sitting position to try and drag me across the parking lot. They kept repeating that they weren't going to allow outside food in. We kept repeating that we would be happily on our way once we were allowed to do what we came there to do. And that back and forth continued.
You know, we talk a lot about what people who are upset about these ICE detentions and ICE deportations should be doing. You are doing something. You're a reverend. I guess you're supposed to be doing something. But I mean, why? I mean, you don't see necessarily a lot of reverends up there, a lot of priests up there, men of the cloth up there, women of the cloth.
Well, I'm personally inspired certainly by Matthew 25:35, where Jesus enjoins us to welcome the stranger, visit the prisoner, feed the hungry. That's what we were trying to do on December 16. But I would push back a little bit on, certainly all of us can be doing more, but there is a very strong faith resistance to this persecution of migrants. U.S. Catholic bishops, of course, very strong statement on that. Mass Council of Churches held a Christmas Eve service outside the Burlington headquarters. Unitarian Universalist Association, Buddhist Coalition for Democracy, all of these are making a high priority of immigrant justice.
Then we had the pastor in Dedham,
Dedham.
who, if
Amen.
people don't remember this, the nativity scene in front of the church, he removed the Mary and Joseph. Jesus wasn't there yet because it wasn't Christmas, but it was Mary and Joseph, removed them and said, ICE was
ICE was
here.
here, yeah.
And it was surprising, though, that the Archbishop of Boston, Richard Henning, who was the first bishop in that ad, was upset about that. What do you think of that?
Well, as a Unitarian Universalist, I don't try to plumb the intricacies of Catholic diversity. I think it's impossible to be not only a good Christian, but a person of faith and not be outraged at the cruelty, the reign of terror that is being waged against migrants.
You know,
whom we are enjoying to
Nastasia, I have to
welcome.
say, I don't think you need to be a person of faith to be outraged
Certainly
by what's
not.
happening. I know, and I didn't suggest you were intimating otherwise. I want to ask the same question Marjorie asked. Why do you do what you do? But a question you probably won't want to answer because all three of you seem to be too kind. Why aren't there, we had this discussion at the top of the show yesterday, why we listed everything that happened in 1 week under Trump. ICE was just one of the abominations. You could do the list yourself. Why do you do what you do, and why did you do what you did, and why aren't more people doing the same thing in your estimation? What are they missing?
Well, I did what I did personally because I'm a mom and I'm used to just doing the thing that needs to be done. There were people who needed food. I have food. I can bring it to them. I agree with Fred that there are a lot of subtle ways that people are pushing back. Ones that are visible, ones that are not as visible. But I also think that it can get extremely overwhelming. As you said, you listed all of the things that happened in 1 week. ICE was only one of them. It can be really easy to feel like anything I do is going to be way too small. It's not going to have a big enough impact. And that tends to be a barrier to people to start trying. And so one of the our primary goal, of course, was to stop the imminent harm that was happening to the people inside that facility. But part of this was also an outstretched hand to anybody who's feeling stuck, who's feeling horrified at what's going on, to say that even the small things are something that we can do.
Eric, you want to answer the same questions?
Yeah, there actually is an awful lot happening. I mean, perhaps we don't always see it, but there are boycotts. Before Christmas, for the 12 days before Christmas, there were demonstrations every single day at the ICE office. And, there was a Velo Airlines. It was an airline that was one of the instrumental airlines in deporting people.
Deportations, yeah.
There was a boycott, and they've had to shut down half the airline. So we've had a big impact. And some other activists and I actually put out a Substack called Don't Mourn, Organize Eastern Mass. And we list the most effective things that are happening.
What's it called again?
It's called Don't Mourn, Organize.
Don't Mourn, Organize.
Eastern
okay.
Mass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some people would say that we in the media are not covering this well enough. I've talked to Jim Monday nights. I tape Rachel Maddow's show because she is very good at highlighting the protests all around the country. But do you think that's part of it? You guys don't get enough coverage. I read you were gone from 4 people to 700 people up there at some points outside the Burlington facility. I'm sure that's not every day, but sometimes.
Well, this is the conundrum for nonviolent protest because, if it bleeds, it leads. People get shot, there's violence, cameras are there in an instant. The constant vigils, the nonviolent protests, that doesn't make the front page if it gets covered at all.
Yeah, by the way, and Eric, you in particular said a second ago, lots of things going on. There are lots of things going on, and I hesitate to say this, but I say it every day, so I should say it to you. It's clearly not enough. And so that doesn't mean that what you do is not spectacular. If we weren't having great admiration for what the three of you and your colleagues did, we wouldn't have had you here. But it's obviously not enough because the steamroller is rolling over everybody, not just people who they claim don't belong in this country. So, Nastasia, starting with you, how do you build this in a way that it has enough critical mass that some of these horrible things can get stopped. And again, I'm not belittling the small victories. That's how you build. I know how important they are. How do we get the big victories in your estimation?
Well, I think one of the ways is helping each other find the thing that is resonant enough with us that we can continue doing it without having to rely on an immediate outcome, because change takes time. And if we're all doing things that are meaningful to us, that give us energy, that help us build community, that incorporate the things that are important to us, we can keep doing those things, and we can invite more people to do those things.
What propels you? What's the thing that is at the core of your activism?
Yeah, I think the care work, the care of delivering food to somebody who is being denied food is what really compels me.
Eric, what was it like to get arrested? Was it scary, or was it they realized that you were nonviolent folks just protesting in the Great American Way, or you get thrown in the cell, or what happened?
It was not particularly scary. The Burlington police, at least to me, they were respectful to me, and we had an opportunity to talk to them about why we were there. We were, the Burlington police station has been replaced, and it's kind of in a temporary office now. So we were in cars for a long time, and we got to talk to them about our story. And I told my officer about somebody I knew, a Haitian man named Enrique, who came here completely legally, under a Biden-era program, filled out all the forms correctly, did everything, was never arrested, and he worked in the construction industry. And while he was working, through a stroke of the pen, President Trump kind of erased his status.
Yeah.
He came home and he got arrested in front of his 2-year-old and his 7-year-old.
Oh my God.
And what good came out of that? We lost this good law-abiding construction worker, and now he's being sent back to Haiti.
Yeah, we should talk about some of the conditions a little bit more. We mentioned that the deal that was struck with Burlington to allow this to begin, the town of Burlington?
Town.
Yes. To begin with, said to be no overnight detentions there. There have been, obviously, in great numbers. And Zoe, our colleague, was on the phone this morning with the chair of the select board up there, Mike Espejo, has talked about how they, quote, exhausted all their efforts at the local level. They went to court, and they were thrown out of court because the affidavits they had about the conditions inside were considered to be outdated, according to the chair of the select board there. And they're doing everything else, apparently reaching out to state and other kinds of leaders to try to get this handled. But I wasn't exaggerating. When we just played that little sound about from De Silva about what the conditions were in there, they're exactly what are described in that the worst prison one of the worst in the world in El Salvador. 35 people in one room,
Yep.
one toilet, sleeping on concrete. They, at least in El Salvador, had those little cots, aluminum foil for blankets. What else?
They
have you
talked
heard?
about how, because no one could get washed, he said there were no sanitary things. I don't know if he was talking about toothbrushes or soap or whatever he was talking about, but he was talking about that after having been there for a few days, the place kind of stunk because it was 35
course.
people sweating next to each other, not being able. You thought to yourself, what is wrong if there's 35 men held in this one place? What's wrong if somebody has to use the John to say, okay, we'll walk you down the hallway and there's another bathroom down here? I mean, it seems like the point is
Cruelty.
and
Exactly.
humiliation.
I think cruelty is the point.
Yeah.
I used the phrase reign of terror before. This is a campaign of intimidation. It is lawless. And we're supposed to be cowed into submission.
And our congressional representatives, according to the law establishing ICE, they can go into that facility at any time with
They
no
have.
notice.
Have they?
Well, except ICE said, "Oh, you have to give us a week's notice."
I see.
And
And
they're
not
kind of
required to do
cooperating.
that.
Yeah, to
They're
my
not-
knowledge, there have been no unannounced
Yeah.
inspections.
That's one
meaning they
thing that would
always
make
have
a big
time
difference.
to clean things up.
Yeah, well, I know. And Moulton, I think Marquis, other people have been there too. I think they probably have been there at least two. But you're right. If they get a week to clean things up, it doesn't really matter. What's your sense from people that you know or people that have seen you? I mean, are people? Well, I don't know if they're even close. I don't know physically if they could honk at you or whatever. I know in Coolidge Corner, people are always out there protesting one thing or another, and people honk or don't honk. I mean, what's your sense of support?
Well, in September, there was a group of protesters unrelated, and I learned later, I didn't know this at the time, but as we were being escorted to police cars, they started singing to us.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, there's been a lot of solidarity. It's really an ecosystem of resistance that the bearing witness folks that you mentioned who show up, going from 4 people in the spring to now 700 weekly. There's a different group that stands out. They bear witness. They bring comfort to the folks who are going in and out for their appointments, because that's a terrifying experience as well. So there's a lot of folks doing a lot of different things that are really supportive.
There's a ton of support. I play bridge in a bridge club, and this is not in the normal constituency that you would think of. But when I go into that bridge club, everybody's, people are high-fiving me
Oh,
and congratulating
really?
me. Absolutely.
Bridge players are really radical, Eric. From what by the way, we have 2 texters who are asking the same question. Is your guest, the Reverend Fred Small, also the wonderful folk singer-songwriter? If so,
There you
kudos to
go.
him for all that he does and his beautiful music. For example, Heart of the Appaloosa, I Will Stand Fast, etc. In any case, thank you, Fred. In fact, that would be you would be that person. Is that not correct?
I'm embarrassed by the compliments, but yes, I am he.
And you're affiliated with the Arlington Street Church right down the street, right?
That's right.
Yeah, which
So-
does all sorts of great stuff. They're always doing something at the Arlington Street Church, protesting something, right?
Yes,
Can we
they
get
are.
back to my negativity for a second? No, because you all are so, I want you to disabuse me. I looked up the latest poll I could find today, because we keep saying on the air every day that even on something where that matter a lot to people who voted for Trump, he's losing a lot of steam on the deportations. I look up this poll. 53% say he's gone too far. Well, you might say that's good. It's not 36% say it's too much, so it's 53 to 36, which is big, but 10% say he's not being tough enough. So essentially, 53 to 46 of your neighbors and ours, only 53 to 46 think that he's doing too much. 46% of the people in this country think that tearing a remesa from, I know that
Ozturk.
inspired you, Ozturk in Somerville off the streets by masked people, where she had no idea if she was being kidnapped, what was going to happen to her. I assume they think that's okay. What's wrong with the 46% who don't get this?
I think they're not seeing it. When I talk to
Yeah.
people from around the country, our experience is different. And when you see it firsthand, when your neighbors are picked up, when your friends are picked up, suddenly you're not subject to kind of the Fox News view of the world. You're seeing the real world, and you're seeing real people with kids who know your kids. Those are
Yeah.
the people being picked up.
Well, that's one of my big theories. People live in 2 bubbles. They even live in the factual bubble, where they live in the misinformation baloney bubble.
So if you got an audience, Nastasia, for the 46% with whom I am obsessed, what do you say to them? To move them?
Yeah. I think...
Well, any of you. You start, and then you can all weigh in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's no one magic thing that we can say to change people's minds, but we can continue to show up over and over and over again, and we can continue to refuse to consent to what's happening, and we can do that visibly, and we can do that boldly and with principle, and we can build bridges.
Do you 3 have experiences of converting someone on this issue that you care
His
deeply
bridge
about?
club.
Well,
Bridge
they were there. No, I'm serious. Do you know, is there somebody either in a congregation or in a neighborhood with whom you've spoken or who's understood your experience, who has said, I really didn't get, you have, Eric, you're nodding, so tell us.
Yeah.
Yeah, a neighbor of ours down the street who was in the Navy. He and I probably didn't agree with lots of things politically, but he had some personal experiences with Haitians, and he came around and talked to us, and it was a whole different conversation.
Well, you know what? It's interesting you say that. I've mentioned this about 10,000 times on the show, so I'll mention it once more. Many, many years ago, when there was much less tolerance for LGBTQ people, Sue O'Connell was on our show, and we cited a New York Times poll where somewhere like 37% of America supported same-sex marriage, and the 37% was almost totally made up of young people and people who said they knew an LGBTQ person. And obviously the number's like 70% now, and I think it's because people, now they realize their neighbor is a lesbian, their neighbor is a trans person, they love their neighbor. And Eric, it seems to me, you mentioned the Haitian experience, he's flipped because he knew people who were affected. So it seems that is the goal, storytelling and realizing that that person's taking care of your mother or whatever the hell it is that gets you there.
Fred Small, if people want to join you up in Burlington, is there a website or there's a time every week that you go, or what's the deal?
Well, first of all, we should acknowledge the wonderful work of Bearing Witness, which has a Wednesday vigil every Wednesday outside of Burlington ICE. And we have a Facebook page.
Okay.
Eric, what's the...
Yeah,
name of it?
Facebook group called, it's Mass AIJ. It stands for Massachusetts Action for Immigrant Justice. So Mass AIJ in Facebook.
I know we're running short of time, so I want to acknowledge in the audience two of our fellow arrestees, Roger Rosen and
Oh, thank
Zabina
you, Roger.
von Meering.
Well, who's the second person?
In the polar bear costume.
Oh my gosh!
Those are my favorites, by the way.
No,
You're looking
that
fabulous.
would be good for sitting out
You're
on the
looking really
sidewalk
good.
today. I think that would.
So, Fred, what are you going to sing before we're done here? You decided what number you're going to perform?
Oh my goodness, I'm thinking that's a rhetorical question. So I'll defer there.
We really admire all three of you and your colleagues here and your colleagues in Burlington for standing for something.
Thank
I
you for
think it's
having
And I
great.
just want to be clear: Bearing Witnesses. If people go online, look for Bearing Witness, they'll find it.
Yes.
Okay, and on Facebook, it's Mass.
AIJ.
Okay, so after MASSAIJ.
And don't
Exactly.
mourn organized Eastern Mass. All those things, check them out, and thanks to all three of you. We really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Be well.
Thank you.
thank you very much
Great.
for
Thanks so much.
doing what you're doing and
Yeah.
for coming in and talking to us about it today. I appreciate it.